I woke up on a cold hospital floor with a stranger's face hovering over mine, and the last thing I remembered was my mother stepping over my dying body to steal the cash from my wallet. $200, that was the price tag she put on my life. $200. As the paramedic pressed an oxygen mask to my face, I heard him talking into his radio saying my blood sugar was at 28, a number so low it could kill you. And lying there on that cold floor, barely conscious, something clicked in my brain that I should have understood years ago. I wasn't their daughter or their sister. I was just someone they used, and now I wasn't useful anymore. But before I tell you how I escaped, how I made them face consequences they never saw coming, and how I'm sitting here today, finally free, I need you to do something. If you've ever felt like the invisible child, the one who doesn't matter, the one who's always expected to give and never receive, hit that like button right now. Subscribe, because I'm here to share real stories about real people who survived impossible families. And drop a comment telling me, have you ever realised that the people who were supposed to love you were actually destroying you? Because here's the thing, if my story sounds familiar, if you're making excuses for people who treat you like I was treated, you might be living my nightmare right now and not even realise it. So stay with me. This gets worse before it gets better, but I promise you it does get better. Let me take you back to where it all started, because you need to understand how a mother could watch her daughter collapse and see dollar signs instead of a human being. My name is Chloe, and I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes when I was 16. I'm 23 now, and for 7 years I've lived in a house where my illness was treated like an inconvenience, a personality defect, like I was faking it just to get attention away from the people who actually deserved it. Those people were my mother Brenda and my younger sister Ashley. In our house there was a hierarchy. Ashley was the star, the golden child, the influencer princess, whose TikTok account with its 40,000 followers was treated like a Fortune 500 company. Mom was the manager, the producer, the devoted supporter who documented every moment of Ashley's supposedly glamorous life. And me, I was the help, the maid, the ATM machine when they needed it, the ghost who was supposed to stay invisible unless they needed something. It didn't start that way. When I was younger, before the diabetes, before Ashley's social media career, I was just a regular kid. Not particularly special, not particularly ignored. But when I got sick, something shifted. Suddenly, my mother had a problem. I required attention, medical care, expensive insulin, constant monitoring. I had become expensive and difficult. And when Ashley started gaining followers at 15, posting her makeup tutorials and outfit videos, I became even more expendable. Because now Mom had a project that could pay off. A daughter who could become famous. A daughter who wasn't broken. I remember the first time Mum told me to skip checking my blood sugar because we were late for Ashley's photo shoot at the beach. I was feeling shaky, my vision was getting blurry, but she snapped at me that I was being selfish, that everything couldn't always be about my drama. I checked it anyway when we got there, and it was 62. Low enough to be dangerous. When I told her, she rolled her eyes and told me to drink some juice and stop complaining. That was the moment I should have seen it. The moment I should have understood that my health, my safety, my life would always come second to Ashley's image. But I stayed. Of course I stayed. They were my family. And I kept telling myself that Mum was just stressed, that she didn't understand how serious it was, that deep down she loved me. I made excuses while I made myself smaller and smaller, trying to take up less space, require less attention, cost less money. I got a job at a coffee shop, working 25 hours a week while taking online community college classes just so I could pay for my own insulin and test strips. I gave Mum half my paycheck for rent, even though I was sleeping on a futon in what used to be a storage room. I cleaned the house, did the grocery shopping, cooked meals that Ashley would photograph for Instagram before barely touching. I disappeared into the walls of that house, and every time I tried to speak up to say I was tired or I wasn't feeling well or I needed help, I was shut down. The worst part wasn't the labour. It wasn't even the money. It was the constant message that I was a burden, that my existence was a problem they had to manage, that I should be grateful they let me stay at all. Ashley would complain about me to her followers, calling me boring and lazy, making jokes about how I never wanted to go out because I was always tired. She never mentioned that I was working and studying while managing a chronic illness. She never mentioned that I was exhausted because I'd been up until 2 a.m. cleaning up after her little influencer party. The narrative was set. Chloe was the loser. Ashley was the star. And I had started to believe it myself. But I had one rule, one boundary I tried to keep. My medical supplies were mine. I kept them in my bag, always with me, because I'd learnt the hard way that if I left them out, Ashley would move them, hide them, throw them away if they cluttered her aesthetic. She once knocked my insulin pen off the bathroom counter and it shattered, and when I got upset she told me I was overreacting about some stupid medicine. She filmed my reaction and almost posted it before Mum told her it would make her look bad. Not that it was cruel, that it would hurt her image. So on that Tuesday evening in March, when I felt the familiar trembling in my hands, the cold sweat breaking out across my forehead, the dizzy confusion that meant my blood sugar was dropping fast, I went straight for my bag. I'd been cleaning all day, preparing the house for one of Ashley's little influencer gatherings, where she and her friends would drink rosé and take photos and leave me to clean up the mess. I hadn't eaten since breakfast because I'd been too busy, and I'd probably miscalculated my insulin that morning. It happens sometimes. But I knew what to do. I had glucose gel in my bag. I had my meter to check how low it was. I just needed to get to it. I was in the kitchen, my vision starting to tunnel, when Mum intercepted me. She was wearing one of her nice dresses, her hair done up because she was performing tonight too. The proud mother of a rising star. She saw me reaching for my bag and her face changed, not to concern, to annoyance. She grabbed my bag before I could, literally yanked it out of my reaching hand. "What are you doing?" she demanded. "I told you to finish the living room. Ashley's friends are going to be here in 30 minutes and there's still dust on the coffee table. You think I can let them see this house looking like this?" "Mum," I managed to say, my tongue feeling thick. "I'm not kidding. My blood sugar. I need my glucose. I need to check." "You're always making excuses," she snapped. "Always playing sick when there's work to do. I'm so tired of this, Chloe. You're 23 years old. You need to take responsibility instead of acting like a helpless child every time I ask you to do something." I tried to explain. I tried to tell her this wasn't about avoiding work, that I was actually in danger, that I could feel my body shutting down. But she wasn't listening. She never listened. She was looking at me with this expression of pure disgust, like I was something rotten she'd found in her refrigerator. And then she did something I'll never forget. She took my bag, the one with my glucose gel and my backup insulin pen and my testing supplies, and she threw it across the room. It hit the corner cabinet and I heard something inside crack. The insulin pen. That was $200 I didn't have to replace. "I don't want to hear it," she said. "You can check your little blood sugar after you finish your chores. Now go clean that living room before I lose my patience completely." The world tilted. I took a step toward where my bag had landed and my legs gave out. I went down hard, and I felt my head connect with the edge of the kitchen table on the way to the floor. Pain exploded through my skull, bright and hot, but it was distant compared to the overwhelming wrongness flooding my body. I was on the tile floor, and it was so cold, and I could hear my mother's voice somewhere above me, but I couldn't make sense of the words anymore. Everything was shutting down. My body was eating itself, desperate for glucose, and there was none coming. I remember thinking with the last bit of clarity I had that this was it, that I was going to die on my mother's kitchen floor because she couldn't be bothered to let me treat a medical emergency. That my last memory was going to be her face twisted in irritation as I collapsed. Then I heard different footsteps, lighter ones. Ashley. For a split second I felt this surge of desperate hope. My sister. Maybe she would help. Maybe she would call 911, get me glucose, do something. She did do something. She pulled out her phone and started filming. "Oh my God," she was saying, and I could hear the smile in her voice, even though I couldn't focus my eyes enough to see her face. "You guys check this out. My sister is being so dramatic right now. She literally threw herself on the floor because Mum asked her to clean. The drama queen energy is unreal. #family drama, #lazy sister." I tried to speak, tried to say help me, tried to beg my baby sister, who I used to read bedtime stories to, who I'd taught to ride a bike, to please just get help. But all that came out was a weak sound, barely human. The last thing I heard before I lost consciousness was my mother's voice, cold and businesslike. She was standing over me, and I felt her hands in my pockets in my jacket rifling through my clothes. I kept my emergency cash there, the $200 I'd been saving to replace my glucose monitor that was starting to fail. I felt her pull it out. "Well, if you're going to die, you won't need this," she said. And I heard Ashley laugh, actually laugh. Then everything went black. I don't remember the neighbour calling 911. I learnt about that later. Mrs. Chen from next door heard the crash when I fell, heard raised voices, and she'd been worried about me for a while. She'd seen me coming home from work late at night, seen how thin I was getting, noticed that I was always the one taking out the trash and doing the yard work while Ashley posed for photos. She told the 911 operator she suspected domestic abuse, and she wanted someone to check on the house immediately. I don't remember the paramedics breaking down the door when no one would answer. I don't remember Ashley trying to hide her phone, or my mother suddenly becoming the concerned parent crying and wailing about her poor sick daughter. I was told about all of that later. What I do remember is waking up to a face I didn't know. A man in a paramedic uniform, maybe 30, with kind eyes and steady hands. He was checking my blood sugar with his own meter, and I heard him tell someone it was 28. Critical. Another few minutes, and I would have had brain damage if I survived at all. "Stay with me," he was saying. "We've got you. You're going to be okay." Behind him I could hear my mother's voice, high-pitched and theatrical. My baby, she was crying, my poor baby. She has diabetes, you know. It's so hard. I try my best, but she doesn't take care of herself. She never listens to me. The paramedic whose name tag read Mark glanced back at her, then at me, and I saw something in his expression. Suspicion. Doubt. He looked around the room, and I realised what he was seeing. My bag thrown in the corner with my supplies spilled out, and my insulin pen cracked and leaking. My mother dressed for a party, makeup perfect, not a hair out of place. Ashley in the doorway, phone in hand, looking annoyed that her event was being interrupted, and me unconscious on the floor with a head wound and blood sugar that should have killed me. He didn't say anything, not then. But he held my hand while his partner got the IV in while they pushed glucose and started bringing me back. And when my mother tried to ride in the ambulance, he very politely told her there wasn't room, that she could meet us at the hospital. I saw relief flash across her face. She didn't want to come. She wanted to stay and host Ashley's party. In the ambulance, as I slowly came back to consciousness, Mark talked to me quietly, asked me questions, what happened, how long I'd been feeling sick, why I didn't get my glucose when I needed it. I was still foggy, still weak, but I told him. I told him my mother took my bag, that she wouldn't let me treat myself, that she took my money while I was unconscious. He was quiet for a moment. Then he did something that changed everything. He pulled a card from his pocket, small and white, and pressed it into my hand. "This is a domestic violence resource centre," he said quietly. "They help with more than just physical abuse. What I saw in that house, what you just described, that's medical neglect. That's financial abuse. That's a dangerous situation. When you're stable, when you're thinking clearly, I want you to call them. They can help you with legal issues, safe housing, getting away. Because, miss, I've been doing this job for 8 years and I've seen this before. This doesn't get better. It gets worse. And next time I might not get there in time." I held that card and started crying. Not from the pain or the fear or the trauma of almost dying. I cried because for the first time in years someone saw me. Someone believed me. Someone was telling me that what was happening wasn't normal, wasn't acceptable, wasn't something I deserved. That simple validation, that tiny piece of paper in my hand, cracked something open inside me that I'd been holding closed for so long. At the hospital, they kept me overnight for observation. The head injury was minor, thankfully, just a small cut that needed a few staples. But they wanted to monitor me, make sure the hypoglycemia didn't cause any lasting damage, get my blood sugar stabilised. Mum and Ashley came by for exactly 15 minutes, just long enough to be seen to play the concerned family for the nurses. Then they left, claiming they had an important event to get to. Ashley's party. The one I'd almost died preparing for. More important than staying with their daughter and sister who'd just survived a medical emergency. After they left, I asked a nurse if I could borrow her phone. I said mine was dead, which was true. It was in my bag back at the house. She handed it over without question, and I went into the bathroom and I called the number on the card Mark had given me. A woman answered, calm and professional, and somehow immediately comforting. I told her what happened. I told her everything, the years of neglect and abuse and being treated like an ATM and a servant, and the finale of my mother literally stealing from me while I was dying. I expected skepticism. I expected to be told I was overreacting, that families are complicated, that I should try to work it out. Instead, she said, I believe you and I'm so sorry this happened. Let's talk about your options. She walked me through everything. How to document abuse, how to file a police report, how to protect my finances, how to find safe housing. She told me about legal aid, about advocates who could help me navigate the system, about support groups for people escaping family abuse. And then she said something that made me stop breathing. Have you checked your credit report recently? I hadn't. I didn't even know how. She walked me through logging into a free credit monitoring site on the nurse's phone using the hospital's Wi-Fi. And there it was. 3 credit cards I'd never opened. All in my name. All maxed out. Combined debt of over $15,000. My mother had been using my identity for years. Since I was 19, maybe earlier. Opening cards, spending them to their limits, making minimum payments when she felt like it, and I'd never known. That's why she always needed my paychecks. That's why she got so angry when I suggested moving out. She needed access to me, to my identity, to my money. I wasn't her daughter. I was her financial resource to drain. The woman on the phone let me cry. Then she said very gently that this was identity theft, that it was a serious crime, and that I could report it. That I should report it, that I deserved justice and protection and a chance to start over without this debt crushing me before my life even began. So I did. Right there in that hospital bathroom, I filed a police report online. Identity theft and financial fraud against Brenda Morrison, my mother. I documented everything I could remember. The times she'd asked for my social security number for family taxes, the times she'd had me sign documents I didn't read carefully. The way she'd controlled every aspect of my financial life while taking every penny I earned. Then I logged into my bank account and froze it. Changed all my passwords to things she would never guess. And I called the police non-emergency line and told them I also wanted to file a report about what had happened that day, about the medical neglect, about the theft of my emergency money while I was unconscious. I told them there might be video evidence that my sister had been filming and that the paramedics who responded could confirm the scene they found. The officer I spoke to was professional and thorough. He took my statement, got Mark's name and unit number so they could get his report, and told me someone would follow up within 48 hours. He also told me something I hadn't considered, that if Ashley had posted that video, it could be evidence, that I should try to find it, screenshot it, document it before she deleted it. I borrowed the nurse's phone again and logged into TikTok on a browser searching Ashley's account. And there it was, posted 2 hours ago. Me collapsed on the floor, barely conscious, while she narrated about drama queens and lazy sisters. The hashtags, the laughing emoji. 40 comments when I found it, most of them laughing along, a few asking if I was okay, 1 or 2 calling her cruel. But it was there. Evidence. I took screenshots of everything, the video, the caption, the comments, all of it. But something else was happening in those comments. A girl named Jessica, who I'd been friends with in high school before I'd isolated myself, had commented, "This isn't funny. Chloe has type 1 diabetes. This is a medical emergency, and you're filming her dying for clout. You and your mother are disgusting." And that comment had started something. People were responding, asking questions, expressing concern, and then outrage. Someone else who knew me chimed in about how they'd seen me at work, how exhausted I always looked, how I'd mentioned my family situation once, and it had sounded awful. The narrative was shifting. Within hours, that video went from a few dozen views to thousands, but not in the way Ashley had intended. She was being ratioed. People were flooding her comments, calling her abusive, heartless evil. Someone screen recorded the video and reposted it with the caption, "This girl is filming her sister having a diabetic emergency instead of helping her." The repost went viral. By the next morning, when I was discharged from the hospital with nowhere to go and a social worker helping me arrange emergency shelter, Ashley's video had hundreds of thousands of views, and the hashtag Justice for Chloe was trending locally. Her other videos were being flooded with comments demanding she apologise, calling her out, tagging brands she'd worked with, and telling them to drop her. The internet had seen exactly what she was, and they weren't laughing with her anymore. The resource centre helped me find a bed at a women's shelter that specialised in domestic violence survivors. It wasn't glamorous, but it was safe and clean, and no one there treated me like a burden. I had a room to myself, access to the kitchen support staff, who helped me manage my diabetes, and didn't roll their eyes when I needed to check my blood sugar. For the first time in years, I could breathe. The police investigation moved faster than I expected. Mark's paramedic report was damning. He'd documented everything: my critical blood sugar, the head injury, the scattered medical supplies, the family's behaviour, the statements I'd made about how I ended up in that condition. He'd noted that my mother appeared more concerned with appearances than her daughter's health, and that the scene suggested neglect and possible abuse. Coming from a medical professional with no stake in the situation, his observations carried weight. Then there was the video. Ashley had deleted it within 24 hours, but the internet is forever. Dozens of people had downloaded it, screen recorded it, saved it. The police had multiple copies. It showed me clearly in medical distress, possibly dying, while my sister mocked me for entertainment. Her voice saying I was being dramatic, that I'd thrown myself on the floor for attention, all while I was literally unconscious from a life-threatening condition. It was evidence of reckless endangerment, criminal negligence at minimum. And the financial fraud was airtight. The credit card companies had records of when the accounts were opened, and in 2 cases the signatures didn't match mine. In one case, there was security footage from the bank of my mother opening the account in person, presenting my ID and documents signing my name. I'd been at work that day. I had punch-in records to prove it. She'd forged my signature and stolen my identity, and there was no way to deny it. I got a call from a detective 3 days after I filed the reports. He wanted to interview me formally, get everything on record. He was respectful and kind, didn't make me feel like I was betraying my family or being vindictive. He treated it like what it was: serious crimes committed against a vulnerable person. At the end of the interview, he told me they'd be pursuing charges: multiple felonies, identity theft, fraud, reckless endangerment, possibly assault given the head injury. My mother was looking at serious prison time if convicted. Part of me felt sick. Part of me felt guilty the way you do when you've been trained your whole life to put your abuser's comfort above your own safety. But a bigger part of me felt free, vindicated, believed. The detective asked if I wanted them to recover my stolen money, the $200 from that night. I almost laughed. It seemed so small compared to everything else. But he said it mattered, that it was theft during a medical emergency, that it showed her priorities and her callousness. So I said yes. Document everything, build the case, make sure she can't do this to anyone else. The next week was chaos. Ashley's influencer career imploded. Every brand she'd worked with dropped her. Her account was mass reported and eventually suspended for violating community guidelines around harmful content. She lost everything she'd built, and I felt nothing but satisfaction. She'd chosen cruelty over compassion, views over her sister's life, and now she was facing the consequences. Mum tried to call me, dozens of times, left voicemails that started with anger. "How dare you do this to your family? You're destroying us, you ungrateful bitch." Then they shifted to bargaining. "We can work this out. I'll pay you back. Just drop the charges. Don't do this." Then came the threats. "I'll make sure everyone knows what a liar you are. You'll never have a family again. You're going to regret this." Finally, desperation. "I'm your mother. I love you. Please don't do this to me. I made mistakes, but I don't deserve this." But it was too late. I'd heard all those tactics before the cycle of abuse laid bare, and this time I wasn't falling for it. I blocked her number. Blocked Ashley's number. Blocked them both on every platform. I didn't owe them access to me. I didn't owe them forgiveness or another chance. I owed myself safety. The legal process took months. court dates, depositions, meetings with prosecutors. The resource centre connected me with a pro bono attorney who helped me navigate everything, who fought to get the fraudulent debt removed from my credit report, who made sure I had protection orders in place. The shelter helped me find a subsidised apartment, got me connected with diabetes support groups, helped me apply for better health insurance so I could actually afford my supplies. I kept working at the coffee shop, but I also started online classes again, this time studying social work. I wanted to help people like me, people trapped in situations they thought they couldn't escape. I wanted to be the person for someone else that Mark had been for me, that the woman on the phone had been, that every advocate and social worker and kind stranger had been during the worst period of my life. The trial happened 8 months after that night on the kitchen floor. My mother was offered a plea deal, 3 years in prison for the fraud charges, probation for the endangerment charges, and restitution to me for the stolen money and fraudulent debt. She took it. The alternative was 7 to 10 years if convicted on all counts. Ashley, as a legal adult who had been present and filmed rather than helped during a medical emergency, was charged with reckless endangerment and failure to render aid. She got probation, community service, and a permanent record. She'd never work with major brands again. Her dreams of being a famous influencer were over. I didn't go to the sentencing. I didn't need to see her. I'd already given my victim impact statement in writing, and that was enough. I'd said what I needed to say, that she'd made me feel worthless and disposable, that she'd valued money over my life, that she'd stolen my identity and my security and years of peace of mind. That I was done letting her define my worth. And then I moved on, really moved on, not the fake moving on where you pretend to be over it while still obsessing. I built a life, a real one, where I mattered, where my health was a priority, where I wasn't serving anyone else's narrative. I made friends in my support group, other type 1 diabetics, who understood the daily challenges, who shared tips and frustrations and victories. I got a better job, one with real health insurance and sick days, and a boss who told me to take care of myself first. I went on dates, some good, some terrible, all of them teaching me something about what I wanted and deserved. I learnt to recognise red flags, to enforce boundaries, to walk away from people who made me feel small. I got a cat, an orange tabby, I named Phoenix, because we'd both risen from ashes. I painted my apartment walls colours I liked. I bought furniture from thrift stores and made the space mine. And 6 months after the trial ended, I got a text from an unknown number. It was Mark, the paramedic. He'd gotten my number from the police report he'd had to testify, for which maybe wasn't totally by the book, but I didn't mind. He just wanted to know if I was okay, if things had worked out, if I'd gotten away safely. I told him everything: the trial, the new apartment, the cat, the job, the classes, the support group, the slowly rebuilding life. I told him that card he'd given me had saved me, that his willingness to see and name what was happening had given me permission to save myself. I told him I was happy, really genuinely happy for the first time in years. His response was simple: "I'm so proud of you, keep going." We got coffee a week later, just as friends, just to talk. He told me about the job, about how he'd seen too many situations like mine where nobody intervened, where the victim was too scared or too beaten down to ask for help. He said he'd started carrying those resource cards for everyone, not just obvious abuse cases, because you never know who needs it. We talked about trauma and healing and the weird guilt that comes with putting yourself first after a lifetime of serving others. Over time, we became real friends. He introduced me to his partner, a nurse practitioner who specialised in diabetes care, and gave me so much helpful advice about managing my condition. They invited me to dinner parties where I met other normal, kind people who treated me like I mattered. I slowly built a chosen family, the kind you don't have to earn or perform, for the kind that just loves you because you're you. 3 years later, I'm sitting in my own apartment, the one I pay for with money I earn and keep. I graduated with my associate degree in social work, and I'm working toward my bachelor's. I volunteer at the resource centre that saved my life, answering phones, offering support, being the voice that says, "I believe you and you deserve better." I manage my diabetes well with the help of good insurance and a supportive endocrinologist and a CGM that I can actually afford. My A1C is the best it's ever been. I haven't spoken to my mother or Ashley since the trial. Last I heard, Mum got out of prison after serving 2 years and moved to another state. Ashley is working retail, living with roommates, her social media dreams dead and buried. Part of me wonders if they ever think about that night, if they ever feel remorse for choosing cruelty. But mostly, I don't think about them at all. Because here's what I learned: the best revenge isn't making someone suffer, it's not getting even or making them hurt the way they hurt you. The best revenge is building a life so good, so full, so authentically yours that they become irrelevant. It's waking up every morning in a place where you're safe and valued. It's having people in your life who would never step over your body to get to your wallet. It's knowing your worth doesn't depend on anyone's approval or acceptance. My mother chose $200 over my life. That was her decision, her moral failure, her legacy. But I chose me. I chose survival. I chose to build something beautiful from the ashes of what they destroyed. And every day I wake up free and healthy and surrounded by people who actually love me. I win. Not against them. They're not even in the game anymore. I win because I'm alive. I win because I'm happy. I win because I learned that family isn't who you're born to, it's who shows up when you're dying on a kitchen floor. Mark showed up. Jessica showed up. The woman on the phone showed up. My support group showed up. My chosen family showed up. And I showed up for myself, finally, after years of abandoning my own needs for people who didn't deserve my loyalty. If you're reading this and you see yourself in my story, if you have family members who treat you like I was treated, I need you to hear this. You deserve better. Your illness, your needs, your existence is not a burden. You are not too dramatic or too sensitive or too expensive. You are a human being worthy of love and safety and basic human decency. And if the people who are supposed to love you can't provide that, you have permission to leave. You have permission to choose yourself. It's terrifying, I know. Leaving feels like betrayal, like failure, like you're giving up on people you're supposed to love unconditionally. But here's the truth they don't tell you: unconditional love has to go both ways. If they can mistreat you without consequences, if they can abuse and neglect and steal from you while you're expected to keep forgiving and enduring, that's not love, that's exploitation. And you don't owe your loyalty to people who've proven they're not loyal to you. So that's my story. From dying on a kitchen floor to thriving in a life I built from nothing. From being worth $200 to knowing I'm priceless. From being invisible to being seen, valued and free. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to choose between your family and your own well-being? Have you ever been in a situation where the people who were supposed to protect you were the ones hurting you? Drop your story in the comments. You're not alone and your experience matters. And if this story helped you see your own situation more clearly, hit that like button and subscribe, because I share real stories about survival, healing, and taking your power back. Your life is worth more than whatever they're offering you to stay small. Choose yourself. You deserve that.